Hello, everybody. Welcome to Joe the Lawyer. I'm your host, Joe Palmetto, a practicing criminal defense attorney in Pittsburgh, PA. And today we will be looking at updates on the Nick Reiner case, who is accused of murdering his father and mother. His father being Rob Reiner, the award-winning, widely acclaimed, known worldwide movie producer. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. If you like my content, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Oh, there's a little sneak peek of my YouTube channel. If you like my content, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Those are great ways to promote this channel, to support me for free. I would love to grow this channel and grow my audience. So I know I haven't been with you guys for about a week. Just been really busy. I'd like to stream every single day, and we'll see if we can get that going. If you are in the chat, please drop your chat. Tell me what you want to talk about. I am here. Got the chat open. But one of the more high-profile cases going on right now is the Nick Reiner murder of Rob Reiner. Nick Reiner was Rob Reiner's son, who was known to be drug addicted and also have severe mental health issues, including schizophrenia. And in one of my last streams, I talked about how Nick Reiner had hired Alan Jackson. And Alan Jackson, I really wasn't that familiar with him, but he's apparently one of the premier criminal defense attorneys in the United States. I was reading some articles about Alan Jackson, and I saw that he charges $5,000 an hour, which, as you all know, attorneys are expensive. But those fees are downright astronomical by the hour. So I did not realize this. Looks like, well, this article was just published on January 15th. Nick Reiner's ex-lawyer, Alan Jackson, breaks silence on why he withdrew from the case. So I wasn't aware that he withdrew from the case until today. It says here, the high-profile lawyer stepped down during a January 7th court appearance, stating he is legally and ethically barred from disclosing the specific reasons. Oh, and before we continue, my Steelers didn't do too well in the NFL playoffs, but Mike Tomlin stepped down, so they're on to getting a new coach and hopefully on to bigger and better things. Everybody cheers with me. It tastes better when we sip together. I'm just drinking Dr. Pepper tonight. Cheers. This is also a shout out to Scott Adams, who passed away last week. Great guy. That's where I got the, he calls it the simultaneous sip. I call it the same time sip. By the way, Brooke, thank you very much. Good to see you. Thanks for joining the live stream. If there's anything you want to chat about, please let me know in the comments. I'm here and can reply in the comments. Thank you very much for stopping by. Hopefully we can get more viewers stream in as we continue. I hope to go for about an hour or so, maybe a little bit longer. So, high-profile lawyer for Nick Reiner, Alan Jackson, stepped down saying he's legally and ethically barred from disclosing the specific reasons. Despite leaving the case, Jackson publicly declared that Nick Reiner is not guilty of murder and cited circumstances beyond control for his departure. Reiner is now represented by public defender Kimberly Green, as legal experts speculate the split may involve financial conflicts or state slayer statutes regarding inheritance. Now, I'm actually not too familiar with those slayer statutes, but I'm pretty sure what it means is that if a person kills their parents or kills somebody they were supposed to inherit money from, and they're found guilty of murder, and I don't know if it's that specific. Maybe if it just found that they killed the person, because he might not be found guilty of murder. Or if he is, might be guilty, but mentally insane. But if you kill somebody you're supposed to inherit from, you no longer get that inheritance, which frankly is a pretty good law, because it hopefully deters people from murdering just so they can fast forward their inheritance and receive that money sooner. And that would make perfect sense here. I didn't even read the rest of the article, but I, as a criminal defense attorney, and as an attorney, I work in family law, other areas of law. he uh he um he I've withdrawn from many, many cases for many, many reasons. And what you are taught to do as an attorney is to not place the reasons for the withdrawal on the record. Now, if the reasons for the withdrawal are financial, I don't think that it's actually as important to conceal that, perhaps, from the court or from the public. But if the reasons are other than financial, I think you certainly need to conceal that. And then this legally and ethically barred from disclosing the specific reasons, and then circumstances beyond control is basically just lawyer speak for saying that I can't actually tell you the reason, but trust me, it's important, right? That's what you say. Trust me, it's important that I get taken off of this case, even though I can't tell you the reason. So let's just look through this article a little bit. Famed defense attorney Alan Jackson doubling down on his claim that Nick Reiner is not guilty under California law. All right, that's going to lead the article, despite his recent and abrupt withdrawal from the double murder case. So, he's helping his client here because any comments he's giving is boosting, is kind of defending Mr. Reiner, right? Saying he's not guilty under California law, like. That's what the lawyer should do, either say nothing or try to bolster Nick's eventual defense. So for him to say that, I wouldn't put quite too much stock into it, but let's see what else he said. In a series of new podcast appearances, Jackson addressed growing public speculation regarding his exit, maintaining that while he is ethically barred from revealing why he stepped down, his belief in Reiner's innocence remains the truth. And a lawyer, especially when the individual that they represented has an active case, can't go out there and say something that would hurt the case. That lawyer could go out there and could spoil the jury pool, could say something that could actually help the prosecution of the individual. So if a lawyer comes on a case and the case is still ongoing, essentially you have two options. Option number one, say nothing. Someone like Alan Jackson, who is looking for fame and money, probably isn't going to say nothing. But at the very least, say something that is going to benefit your client. And to come out and just say, he's not guilty, and based on my investigation, my understanding of the case is not guilty, it will only help Nick Reiner's case. So what Alan Jackson's doing here is totally the right thing, right position to take. Although I don't think you can read that much into it because of what I just said. Like, the case is not at a point where Alan Jackson can maybe be perhaps more direct about his thoughts. But again, he's a criminal defense lawyer, so he's got to kind of voice these types of positions. Since then, Jackson has appeared on the Hot Mics podcast with Billy Bush and Let's Talk Off Camera with Kelly Ripa to clarify his stance. He confirmed that his team investigated the matter top to bottom before his departure and concluded that Reiner is legally not guilty of the charges. Reiner is accused of the December 14th stabbing deaths of his parents. Filmmaker Rob Reiner and Michelle Singer Reiner is now being represented by the LA County Public Defender's Office. And, with those Slayer statutes, and maybe Nick in his relationship with his parents didn't really have a lot of access to his own money. And with them now being dead and him having a couple other siblings that are on the outside, they may be preventing him from having that access. That's very possible. And if he doesn't have any right as of right now to that money, he may simply not have the money. And, he may have already paid Alan Jackson tens of thousands of dollars, and now he's got to jump off his case. I mean, the very least that Mr. Jackson can do is go out there and boost Mr. Reiner's case in the public eye. I don't know if that's what happened, but it very well could be that, because his hourly rate is very high, mean, paid Mr. Jackson, got on the case, investigated the case, did some early hearings, bond, etc., and then they just ran out of money, and that was it. Because it probably take $1 million for Alan Jackson to do this entire case. During an intense exchange on hot mics, Billy Bush pressed Jackson on whether a financial dispute or money thing led to the withdrawal. Jackson immediately pushed back, stating, "You can't say that. You can't say that, Billy. You can't say something happened with the retainer because I've never said that." Okay. Jackson emphasized his decision to speak out was about correcting the record. "It was important for me to right some wrongs that had been printed. Lots and lots of speculation, lots of people who want to believe certain things. So with the statements, that's as far as I'm going to go. I believe exactly what I said. What I said is the truth." He also reiterated his continued support for his former client, saying, "My team and I remain and will remain completely committed to the best interests of Nick Reiner. And that's also true, and that's not going to change." What we don't know, the specific ethical obligations or legal standards that forced Jackson to withdraw remain strictly confidential. While the public has speculated about Reiner's ability to pay for a high-level private defense or potential conflicts regarding his parents' estate, Jackson has refused to confirm or deny any specific rumor. Additionally, the public defender's specific strategy for the upcoming arraignment remains unknown, though legal analysts have pointed to a likely not guilty by reason of insanity defense given Reiner's documented history of schizoaffective disorder. And if you saw my earlier videos, I believe that's going to be a strategy, not guilty by reason of insanity. And that would get Mr. Reiner, at least, he may still spend the rest of his life in custody, but he wouldn't spend it at a state prison, a state penitentiary. But I think they could also possibly go for, I don't know how convincing this one is, but I think it's on the table in this case. It's certainly on the table. They could go for temporary insanity. And temporary insanity is like this. It's like the golden goose of criminal defense lawyers on a homicide in a case like this, because if you win by reason of temporary insanity, it's a straight acquittal. The client is not guilty of all charges, and the client will go free, will walk free, will not spend any more time in jail than they did awaiting trial. So not guilty by reason of temporary insanity is a truly powerful defense if you can pull it off, if it can happen. Additionally, what's next? Nick Reiner remains in custody without bail, Twin Towers Correctional Facility, which is, I'm sure most of you remember 5 years ago, George Floyd, 10 years ago, there was a big movement in the country to modify bond and bail. Now, it wasn't uncommon for people in homicides to be denied bond outright. But I can say in the last 5 to 10 years, it has become much more common for people to be denied bail outright. Although there are murderers who get out on bail. But nowadays, you get more of a straight denial of bail rather than setting a cash bail. It's just the trend currently. So that's not a double homicide. This is not this is par for the course. His arraignment was delayed following Jackson's withdrawal to allow the public defender time to review the case. Is currently scheduled for February 23rd. At that time, Reiner is expected to enter a formal plea to the 2 counts of first-degree murder. So in Pennsylvania, you'd be looking at this February 23rd date. In Pennsylvania, you don't have to, at your initial arraignment, you don't have to come forward and say not guilty by reason of insanity. You don't have to assert that defense until trial. So it's possible in some of these other counties, some of these other states, you have to state it very early on. So that might be what they're addressing there. The way it works in Pennsylvania is you can assert that insanity plea, but you do have to give the prosecution notice. So you have to let them know a reasonable time before trial that this is what you are doing. The other one of the other reasons that I'll say about Alan Jackson that it probably concerned money is because now Nick has the public defender, and the public defender only represents people who are indigent, and you are only indigent if you do not make it's essentially the poverty line. You're only indigent if you make less than what the poverty line is in your state. So you have to qualify for a public defender. And if Nick qualifies for a public defender, he almost certainly, I'm not exaggerating here, is flat broke. And, a lot of times in homicides, family members will come forward in order to help people retain attorneys. But when you have a double murder of parents, it can be a different story. And getting the funds to pay for the defense, his brother, he has a brother and a sister. I don't know the exact family makeup, but because of the Slayer statutes, no automatic money from mom and dad, and then the brother and sister, his siblings, are likely freezing him out, and he probably had no money to begin with except the money that was given to him. So, and now he's incarcerated. Scott Allen, you said work. Yeah, I mean, you can't work while you're in jail. Did he work prior to jail? It certainly doesn't appear so. He had so many issues with drugs, etc. So that's why it almost certainly, like, Mr. Jackson's not able to go forward because of money. And the other thing too is that if money was the issue, and it was like, well, I just can't pay the most expensive defense lawyer in the country, then he could have hired a local attorney that doesn't bill as much as Mr. Jackson, right? This guy probably cost at least $1 million to defend the case. He could find a local attorney that would do the case for substantially less money and still do it on a private basis. So him going with the public defender almost certainly means that this whole issue is over money. And Alan Jackson probably believes in the case. Well, number one, he's just doing the best thing. He's saying the best thing he can for his client. But I agree, I still believe this is a strong not guilty by reason of insanity case. Whether they'll pull off temporary insanity, I don't know. I'll tell you, it's on the table though. But of an overall insanity defense, I think they have a pretty good chance of. All right, let me just check out the comments here. Glad to see you're going live more. We missed you. We promoted your book a few times. Thank you very much, Brooke. I appreciate it. Addicted and substance abuse disorder. I know, Brooke, I got so much clanging around in my head. It's hard for me to differentiate. My judge recused himself from a case and was livid when I asked what I was supposed to do. Well, yeah, you can't, judges aren't kind of supposed to give legal advice. Then again, they can. Unfortunately, the only areas where you get a free lawyer is criminal defense. If you're in a civil case, it's very difficult. Sometimes some family matters will get like court-appointed attorneys, but many don't. Look, a crowd. Yeah, we got a bit of a crowd in here. Thank you very much, Scott. Thank you. More of a Diet Coke. I too glad you live more from a Diet Coke guy. Yeah, I usually have Diet Coke, but I don't know. These days I have so many different things in my kitchen. It's just, what do we have? I'm not sure temporary is going to pass the sniff test because of history of being non-compliant with treatment. That's a good point, Brooke. Although I what I would say is that a change in medication is literally a textbook temporary insanity, or more appropriately is not necessarily the change in medication, which is what Nick went through, but it's when a person goes off the medication completely, because then you have a person who their baseline, they are insane, and then when they have the medication, they're functional, stable human beings, and then when they come off the medication, they go back to the baseline. Whereas a change in medication should still keep you above the baseline, although it can certainly affect behavior. To the degree that somebody does what Nick does is a different question. So I think that temporary would be difficult, but it is definitely on the table here, and I think just the standard in guilty, not guilty by insanity, I think is pretty strong here. And what you said about work, Scott Allen, well, it doesn't appear to me that he really worked. Or he did some work for his dad, but like dad and mom probably controlled all the money, and dad and mom are gone, and brother and sis ain't looking to help him out, and I don't think he had really any of his own true sources of income. Yeah, see, my sister murders someone, I'm not paying for an attorney. I mean, listen, bro, it's one thing if your family member murders, a complete stranger, but for the family member to kill your parents and then you're going to help them out financially with a lawyer is something totally different, right? That's even on another level. Patricide, is that what it's called? It's like a whole nother level. Whereas, yeah, I could easily say, you're accused of murder. I'm not helping you. I'm not going to pay for you. But you're not just accused of murder. You're accused of murdering our parents. So, will be interesting. I believe $800 a month in my area of New York. In Pennsylvania, I'm not sure what the poverty line is. But I personally, I get a lot of clients that will call me and they'll say, listen, I don't make that much money, but I make enough that I don't qualify for the public defender. And then they'll ask me to work with them, and I try to do the best I can. If he does that consistently, if he's not going to comply, is a huge risk to reoffend. Substance abuse is not a defense. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, his history is very dotted and will probably work against him, but I guarantee they're going to be able to find an expert who goes up there and says that he's insane. He was insane at the time of the murder, and it'll be about what we call in the legal field, right, the battle of experts. It'll be the prosecution's expert versus the defense's expert, and they'll battle it out, and the jury will decide who is more convincing. So that was just an interesting piece of news. I wanted to look at this. I also saw here, I didn't read this yet, but Nick Reiner's mental health conservatorship puts new point of view on tragedy and defense strategy. Nick Reiner's 1-year mental health conservatorship looks to play a prominent role in his defense against the 2 charges of first-degree murder with special circumstances and the December 14th stabbings of his parents. He was placed on a court-approved arrangement. Unlike the more common type of conservatorship that the likes of Britney Spears was under for years, which controls financial affairs and autonomy, Reiner's physician-originated LPS conservatorship is focused on medical matters such as treatment and medications. Facing life behind bars, Nick has had addiction issues for years. Over the past decade, his father spoke out on numerous occasions about how he and Reiner's mother regretted adopting the so-called tough love approach advocated by various addiction specialists and therapists, fictionalizes some intent, etc., etc. While presenting no new information on claims of schizophrenia and adverse reactions to medication, the conservatorship offers more insight into efforts to combat the younger Reiner's problem with drugs and mental health issues. This adds a whole new layer to Reiner's struggles in defense. It certainly makes the job of the public defender a little easier if they put up insanity or mental health as their case. I would agree. I think they're going to be able to find a psychiatrist that will come forward and say that he's legally insane. I really do. There's just loads of evidence. Whether the jury buys it, and the prosecution will probably be able to come up with a psychiatrist. I'm going to say probably, and certainly a psychiatrist who says he was not insane. So again, battle of the experts. Insisting last week Reiner will be found not guilty by a Los Angeles jury. Insisting last week Reiner will be found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt by an LA jury District Attorney Nathan Hochman said before Christmas he and his team want to meet with the family, especially Romy, oldest brother Jake, and Tracy, to learn how they want to proceed on potential punishment. Yeah, I mean, the brothers and sisters are working with the district attorney's office. They're certainly not going to be helping him financially. With conversations continuing, the family has spoken with the DA's office at least once and made it clear they are not in favor of the death penalty, I'm told. Okay. Behind bars in downtown LA, but no longer on suicide watch. He's scheduled to be back in LASC Judge Teresa McGonigal's courtroom at the Clara Shortridge Foltz Criminal Justice Center on February 23rd. He's expected to enter a plea then, although Reiner was expected to enter a plea during his previous 2 hearings, so another delay is possible. Yeah, expect this case, especially given the loads of medical evidence, to drag out for a very long period of time. And also this conservatorship, I agree with the overall statement that it will help his defense to a large degree. I mean, it's evidence in favor of the fact that he was insane. I agree they'll use insanity. I just don't think they'll get temporary. He wasn't compliant. He's not going to be able to be on supervised hospitalization. Yeah, I think that's a very likely outcome, Brooke. Although I do think the DA is going to go hard and argue that he wasn't insane. He wasn't insane, and he wasn't insane at the time of the crimes. So, but I personally just the wild, the erratic and wild behavior he had. I would say I think the defense is going to win with the insanity defense. So that would be my prediction, is that they'll win with the insanity defense. I'm putting temporary insanity in play. I think there's a lower percentage chance, but I don't think the prosecution's going to secure a good old-fashioned guilty first-degree homicide, no insanity. I don't think that's going to be the case. So I thought those articles were interesting. Here's another one. I already knew this. Rob and Michelle Reiner's son Nick switches schizophrenia medication 1 month before their killings. We knew that. That's going to play a very significant role in the trial. And over here, we've got some true crime news. And what I was doing on my last stream was just running through some of these. And right at the top here, this is wild. Family accused of killing 3-year-old during exorcism. Once case thrown out under California's Racial Justice Act. Attorneys for a family charged with killing a 3-year-old during an exorcism are seeking to have the case thrown out under California's 2020 Racial Justice Act. The act claims to correct bias in the criminal justice system. Aurelie Naomi Proctor was killed on the altar of the Iglesia Evangelica Apostoles y Profetas Church in San Jose, California. Wow. Firefighters who responded to the scene allege the child had been tortured for 12 hours. What in the holy heck? Wow. A coroner determined the child died of mechanical asphyxia and smothering. Family members claimed they were trying to save her. The child's mother, Claudia Lisa Hernandez, said Proctor was possessed by a demon and God told the family he was going to take her from them. Proctor's uncle and grandfather at the time corroborated the story. They allegedly held the child down and strangled her to get rid of the demon. Proctor's mother strangled her multiple times to the point where the victim went unconscious. She stuck her hands down her throat, continued the course of conduct for almost a full day. As FIL, yeah, you nailed it. Somebody else was possessed by a demon. Police said the family did not attempt to perform CPR or call 911. All 3 family members were charged with felony assault on a child causing death. The district attorney is seeking a punishment of 25 years to life in prison. It should just be felony assault on a child causing death. Well, that's interesting because they're not pursuing a criminal homicide case, and the reason for that, in my opinion, is in order to prove first-degree homicide, You have to have an intent to murder, an intent to kill, specific intent to kill. And the district attorney must have decided they can't show that specific intent because these people are acting under this, whatever you want to call it, a religious delusion. And so they didn't intend to kill the child. They just engaged in unbelievably reckless behavior that did kill the child. Now, more than 4 years after Proctor's death, defense attorneys who are representing the family have filed a joint motion under California's Racial Justice Act accusing the police and prosecutors of bias towards them because of their religious faith, ethnic identity, and national origin. They claim the family acted in good faith with no ulterior criminal motive, and that as Salvadoran Pentecostals, they have an absolute belief in divine supernatural intervention. KRON reports Trigueros Hernandez was the pastor where Proctor was killed, and the RJ motion states he has experienced in faith. He was experienced in faith, healing, and exorcisms. The motion claims that in one case of possession, Trigueros Hernandez allegedly witnessed a crocodile 12 to 18 inches long emerge from a woman and then be burned after he prayed over her for 6 hours. Sorry, I shouldn't laugh. This is a terrible, terrible crime. In January 2022, a few days before she was arrested in connection with Proctor's death, the child's mother posted a YouTube video discussing the child's death, saying, I could sit here and be negative, be sad about the whole situation that she passed away, but it's like, there's no point, because it is what it is. All three defendants remain jailed without bail. They will appear in court on January 22nd. This is just a horribly, horribly tragic story. It's sad to think that these things, this kind of thing is happening in this day and age. I think they avoided the first-degree homicide charge because of the specific intent. And, because first-degree homicide, at least in Pennsylvania, is an automatic life sentence. To think that these people could get 25 years and then be paroled at that point, I don't know. Even that is fairly disturbing after what this child went through. And it's a really, the coroner determined Proctor's uncle, Rene Hernandez Santos, and grandfather Rene corroborated the story. Coroner, the mother, I'm trying to understand here who the three people were that committed this killing. Did it include the pastor at that church? Because I know they cited him, this Trigueros Hernandez. Did it include him, or was it three other individuals? To just take something like this into your own hands and then do this to a family member is truly just unbelievable. Acting under, religious delusion, and, inspired by someone in the church, this Trigueros Hernandez, that espoused these types of stories. Just goes to show how dangerous that type of thing can be, to go around saying that these types of things are true, or that can be taken into the hands of a regular individual in the church. It's absolutely crazy. The Catholic Church, apparently the Catholic Church still has exorcists and believes in exorcisms. And, I'm not saying I fall into that camp, but what I will say is at least I think a priest has to do it, right? Like, it can't just be done by anybody. So to just take this into your own hands and try to perform something like this is absolutely terrible and tragic. On the legal perspective, again, I think the prosecutors they're not going to be able to show specific intent. I believe, if these individuals testify, they're going to tell the story. I believe they already have told the story that they thought that they were possessed by a demon. And so they didn't intend to kill the child. They were trying to save the child. They were operating under a false belief. Now, what what was it? There was like a documentary or something that I saw where a defense like this was brought up in in like the 1970s, and the Catholic Church, apparently it involved Catholics, I believe. I'm not even sure it involved Catholics, but the defendant was going for some sort of defense along these lines. Man, I'll have to look it up. I watched this documentary, but they were this case. If I can only think of that documentary, I believe it was on Netflix. There was an individual who committed crimes and then claimed when they committed the crimes, they were possessed by a demon. And I believe this person, like, medically had some sort of dual personality thing going on. Anyway, they committed a murder or murders, and then their defense was, I was possessed by a demon. And this was sometime, I believe, in the 1970s or 1980s. And the defense lawyer wanted to, I can't remember if they let him. I want to say they didn't. Wanted to bring in an expert, and the expert was going to testify that this person had been possessed by a demon. And the judge said no. So expert opinions, there are standards for what an expert opinion, what kind of expert can come in and talk. And it's not just the individual's qualifications. It is your opinion. Is it based on well-known, accepted science? And the judge denied them that expert. And I remember watching this documentary, and the church, because it was a high-profile case, Catholic Church, lots of churches had been very interested, although they declined to get it directly involved. They were sending observers to see what the courts did. And the court said no, and the person went to trial. And I think they still asserted this demon defense, but not with an expert opinion, and they were convicted and they lost. Because it's one thing to exclude an expert from talking about that, but if the defendant themselves is going to get up there and tell their story, like, they're going to be allowed most of the time to say that I was possessed by a demon, like Zephiel said, the girl wasn't possessed here, the parents were, right? But that's a defense for murderers too. A couple hundred years ago, they'd look at the Nick Reiner case and say that he was possessed by a demon, right? The possessed by a demon thing isn't going to help a defendant. But it could affect the specific intent. And my guess is that's the reason they're not charged with homicide. They're not charged with homicide because the prosecution knows it's going to have a hard time showing what's called malice aforethought, which means you knew in advance you're going to kill the person. Premeditation, you planned and took steps to kill the person, because as ridiculous as it is, they probably did not intend to actually kill her. They were just acting under false ideas and beliefs and caused her death. And it may be similar to somebody who was trying to, I don't know, those people that drink silver or whatever, and you give someone silver and they end up dying. It's like, you didn't mean to kill them, you were trying to cure them. It doesn't mean the law is just going to let you go, but you won't necessarily get first degree homicide. And so it's probably charged appropriately. The minimum 25 years is still pretty rough, and when you get 25 to life, there's no guarantee that you ever will get out, or if you do get out, you may be a very, very old person by the time that happens. So, crazy story. This racial justice thing. I don't know anything about that law. Okay, but I can pretty much guarantee that it isn't going to bail them out in this situation. Um, it's yeah. I mean, people. Yeah, I mean, I get it. Like, there's these Salvadoran Pentecostals and et cetera, et cetera, and it's a small, maybe religious community, and even smaller in the United States. And I guess they're from, El Salvador, and so they're claiming that they were targeted discrimination. It's like, no, you killed somebody. Like, you killed someone. You really can't blame the lawyers for trying it, because when you're a lawyer, you got to be creative. When your case is tough, you got to go think outside the box. I don't know what this statute says. I just, I would bet some money that it's not going to bail these people out. I just can't see it happening. There's no freaking way. But hey, listen, everybody. I plan to go a lot longer tonight, but I'm feeling pretty tired, and I think I'm gonna cut it. I'm gonna cut it a little bit early today. In the future, I want to make my live streams at least an hour, hour and a half. Thank Brooke, great to see you. Zephiel, thank you for stopping in, everybody. Scott Allen, all you guys, I truly appreciate it. Drop me a like. I know you guys always do, or comment, and we'll keep this thing going. I think what I'm going to be doing is kind of what we did today. I'm going to follow Nick Reiner case. I'm going to follow, major headline cases, but also just essentially look at true crime around the country and offer a legal perspective, with the opinion of an active practicing criminal defense attorney. All right, everybody. And Brooke, thank you for recommending my book on sovereign citizens. They will always hold a special place in my heart. I just want to talk about different topics. So I'm pushing this channel more, although the sovereign citizen content was more popular. I'll still talk about it on occasion for sure. All right, everybody. Tired? Yes, I'm possessed by There's the church of Joe's bed is going to perform the exorcism on me tonight. Help me get to sleep. All right, everybody. Have a terrific day, guys. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Hope you are well. Good to see you, Brooke, everyone.